There is a kind of breaking that doesn't come to kill you. It comes to shoot you forward. But before an arrow cuts across the sky, it has to be pulled backward. Stretched so hard it feels like it might snap. Dragged so far into the dark it feels buried. Held so still it feels like the whole world has left you behind in some dusty red frontier town. No horse, no water, and not a single soul calling your name. And this is the part that hurts the most. You think you're falling behind. You're not. You're being pulled back so your soul can gather force. Carl Jung called this phenomenon enantiodromia. When a force is pushed to its extreme, it begins to turn into its opposite. The person who has been too obedient suddenly can no longer stomach submission. The person who has always been strong suddenly collapses from exhaustion. The one who has lived too long for everyone else suddenly hears a cold voice rise from deep within. That's enough. Don't be foolish enough to call that failure. Don't lie to yourself and say you've lost your way. Maybe you haven't lost the road. Maybe the old road is being burned to the ground so you can't crawl back to it anymore. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 gates most people must pass through right before the best chapter of their life begins. And the final gate is the most terrifying one, because it doesn't force you to face your darkness. It forces you to face your own light. You think you have a personality. You're half wrong. What you call your personality is often just a mask society has rewarded for far too long. You learned how to smile at the right time, stay quiet in the right places, be pleasant, be reliable, be the kind of person who doesn't cause trouble, be someone everyone feels safe standing next to. And then you started believing that was you. But Jung looked deeper. He called the persona the social mask. The persona is not evil. It helps you survive, it helps you work, communicate, raise a family, keep your position, and avoid getting stoned by the crowd. But the problem begins when you forget to take it off. Then one day, you look in the mirror and see someone who seems fine, seems mature, seems in control, but there is no fire left in their eyes. Only an old cowboy standing in the middle of Main Street at sunset, one hand still resting on his worn-out gun, while deep down he knows the truth. This fight doesn't belong to him anymore. Your life isn't falling behind because you are weak. It's falling behind because the mask has been drinking too much blood from your soul. And when the soul refuses to pay the price any longer, the whole performance starts to collapse. The first gate usually comes in rough, no background music, no holy light, no angel knocking at your door. Just one morning, you open your eyes and realize you no longer want to keep being the same person you were, still trying to defend yesterday. You sit in a meeting, people talk about plans, targets, reports, strategies. Their mouths are moving, but all you hear is the sound of tin cans rolling down a dirt road. You used to be good at that game. You used to know when to nod, when to slip in a smart comment, when to look busy so people would think you mattered. But now, everything inside you feels dry as bone. You show up at a gathering with old friends. Someone talks about buying a car, someone talks about a promotion, someone brags about their kids, their house, their vacation. You still smile, but that smile doesn't reach your soul. There's a hollow weight in your chest, heavy as stone. And you ask yourself, why do I feel like a stranger around the very things that used to make me feel like I belonged? Because your persona is going bankrupt. Think of it this way. Every time you say, I'm fine, when you are actually hurting, you pay a tax. Every time you take on more work just to protect the image of being strong, you pay another one. Every time you grit your teeth and keep playing the role of the good one, the sacrificial one, the understanding one, you borrow more energy from your future. Then one day, the unconscious bank slams its doors shut. No more loans, no more strength on credit, no more funding for a fake personality that has already cost your soul too much. People on the outside will say, you've been different lately. You're more negative now. You're not like you used to be. You've lost your motivation. No, you didn't lose your motivation. You lost the ability to keep betraying yourself. Jung would not call this a breakdown. He would call it a rebellion of the unconscious. The deepest part of you begins pulling energy away from a life that is no longer wide enough to hold your real self. That is why you suddenly feel irritated by things you used to tolerate. You no longer want to answer meaningless messages. You no longer want to over-explain yourself. You no longer want to please people who only loved your mask. Don't be so quick to call yourself selfish. Sometimes what you call selfishness is simply the first time your soul has been allowed to breathe. This is the death of the good child. The child who believed that if they were sweet enough, useful enough, agreeable enough, people would not leave them. By middle age, a person begins to understand something brutal. Being kept around because you obey is not love. That is just being hired as the emotional ranch hand for somebody else's chaos. The first gate hurts because it strips away your most familiar kind of power, the power of the role. You used to feel strong because people needed you. Now, you have to learn a different kind of strength. Being strong even when nobody claps. When the mask becomes heavier than the face, the soul will rip it off with its own hands. And the next part is where it gets dangerous. After the persona collapses, the parts of your life you once buried alive will start crawling out of the grave. There are people inside you who were never allowed to live. The artist you locked away because you had to make money. The adventurer you tied down because your family needed stability. The curious child you silenced because society prefers people who are predictable, manageable, and easy to put in a box. The rebel you buried beneath a well-ironed shirt and a polite smile. But Jung understood something that can chill the blood. What is repressed does not die. It only goes down into the basement of the unconscious and waits for the day it can come collecting. At some point, often after 30, 40, or 50, the unlived life begins to invade. Suddenly, you hunger for another direction, not a childish craving, a deep hunger, like a person who has crossed the desert their whole life and only now realizes they have never tasted real water. You may have a stable job, but something inside you keeps getting pulled towards something strange. Writing, painting, learning a new language, changing careers, traveling far away, slowing down, building a channel, starting a project, opening a door you once told yourself you had no right to open. You catch yourself staring out the window longer than before. You hear an old song and suddenly want to cry. You pass a train station, a field, or some dusty red road in your imagination, and you feel as if another version of you is standing there, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, staring at you with a half-mocking look. It's time, partner. How much longer are you planning to play dead? Do not underestimate those urges. They are not random impulses. They are summons from the soul. Most people call this a midlife crisis, but that phrase is too cheap. It is only society's way of mocking those who are beginning to wake up from the role they were assigned. Jung would say, the forgotten part of you is returning to make you whole. Because the goal of life is not to become perfect, the goal is to become complete. Perfection cuts away the parts that don't look pretty. Wholeness dares to look at the whole mess and say, this is also me. This carries a gift too. There is gold here too. Are you grieving the years you lost? Good. That grief is proof you are still alive. Are you aching for the person you never became? Good. That pain is a gold mine buried beneath stone and dust. The artist you abandoned may be holding the vision for your next chapter. The rebel you forced into silence may be holding the courage you need to cut yourself free from rotten relationships. The seeker you dismissed as too dreamy may be holding the meaning that money, status, and reputation could never give you. Do not become a victim of time. Do not say, it's too late. A mighty tree does not apologize because its roots took a long time to grow. Out in the wild country, Some horses take years before they let anyone ride them. But once they run, the dust behind their hooves can cover the whole sun. You are the same. Your delay is not proof that you lost. Maybe it was the soul forging a kind of strength that cannot be bought quickly. If this part reminds you of a version of yourself you once abandoned, leave a comment. I hear it. No need to explain. Just let your unconscious know that from today on, you are no longer silencing the unlived life inside you. Because some callings do not need to be proven, they only need to be acknowledged. The unlived life does not return to haunt you. It returns to hand back the gold you once left behind. But once you begin listening to that call, the next thing will happen. The people who once understood you will no longer understand you, and the social mirror begins to crack. Human beings do not live on food alone. They live on reflection. From the time you were small, you learned to look into other people's eyes to figure out who you were. When your parents were pleased, you felt you were good. When your teachers praised you, you felt you were smart. When your friends invited you in, you felt valuable. When your boss recognized you, you felt successful. You thought you had a compass. But in truth, you were using other people's faces as your map. That is the social mirror. And one day, when you begin to truly change, that mirror no longer reflects you correctly. You sit with old friends, same place, same stories, same kind of laughter. But this time, it feels like you are sitting in a strange frontier town, hearing music drift out of an old saloon, yet no longer wanting to step inside. They talk the way they always did, but you are not there anymore. Not because you are above them. Do not lie to yourself with that cheap spiritual nonsense. It is simply that the frequency has shifted. You try to explain what is happening inside you. You talk about the exhaustion, the feeling that your fire has gone out, the fact that you no longer want to live a false life. They look at you like you just rode in from the desert, dust all over your face, talking about darkness and the soul. Then they tell you to rest, take a trip, fall in love with someone. Change jobs, cheer up. They do not understand, and maybe they do not need to. This is the part that hurts the most. You realize many people only loved the version of you that you performed for them. They do not miss you. They miss your convenience. You text less, and they say you are cold. You set boundaries, and they say you have changed. You stop rescuing them, and they say you are selfish. You stay silent, and they say you are arrogant. Do not rush to repair your image. Do not throw yourself into explanations like a gambler trying to win back everything on the final hand. The broken mirror is a ritual. Jung understood that no human being can truly individuate while still addicted to outside validation. You cannot become yourself while every decision still has to ask, "What will people think?" At this gate, one terrifying question begins to appear. Who am I when no one is watching? No title. No position, no rescuer role, no story of "I am the strong one." No admiring eyes, no applause, only you and the silence. Many people run from this place. They go back to the crowd. They beg to wear the mask again. They would rather be misunderstood inside a familiar role than stand alone in the truth. But the rare soul does not run. They stay. They let isolation do its work. You may notice your phone ringing less, fewer invitations, old circles slowly fading. You no longer feel alive in the social rituals that once gave you a sense of belonging. This is not necessarily loneliness. This is the season of growing roots. Like bamboo, for years it may seem like it is not growing at all, and everyone thinks it is useless. But underground, it is driving its roots deep, wide, and strong. Then when the season comes, it shoots upward, like nature itself fired a bullet into the sky. You are in your root season. The dark soil is not there to bury you. The dark soil is there to protect you from poisonous winds while a new structure forms. Out in the wild western country of the soul, not everyone who walks alone has been abandoned. Some walk alone because the road is too narrow for the crowd. Some have to ride far away from the town lights to hear the hoofbeats of destiny again. Some have to lose all the noise before they can hear their true voice. You are not isolated because life hates you. Maybe you are being separated from the crowd so they cannot drag you back into your old speed. Do not treat this silence as proof that you have no value. Silence is the room where the soul changes clothes. When you stop searching for yourself in other people's eyes, your inner light finally has room to burn. And after the mirror breaks, you step into the gate that strong people fear the most. Letting go. Not giving up, but the kind of letting go that belongs to someone who has fought long enough to know this battle will not be won with fists. The person who has lived by willpower is going to hate this gate, because their whole life they believed that if you want something, you have to pull, push, tighten your grip, and stay in control. If it doesn't work, try harder. If you're not there yet, run faster. If it hurts, grate your teeth. If you're exhausted, drink more coffee. If your fire is gone, call yourself lazy. Sounds very masculine, very strong, very cowboy. But sometimes that is just a frightened man whipping a horse that is already bleeding. There comes a stage where the harder you try, the more stuck life becomes. The more you plan, the more tangled everything gets. The harder you chase, the farther your desire seems to run. Not because you are weak, but because your little ego is trying to ride a river. Jung made a distinction between the conscious ego and the self, the deeper, wider, more whole center of who you are. The ego wants safety, control, and quick results. The self wants wholeness, right timing, right direction, and true alignment. And when these two are in conflict, your life starts to feel like a wagon being pulled in two different directions. The ego shouts, "Hurry up." The soul says, "Wrong road." The ego shouts, "I need to succeed." The soul says, "First, stop living a lie." Active surrender begins when you are tired enough to stop pretending you are God over your own life. But listen closely. Surrender does not mean lying around and calling it spirituality. Don't be foolish. Active surrender means you still act, but you no longer sell your soul to the outcome. You still write, you still work, you still learn, you still open doors, you still step out onto the road. But inside, you no longer carry that panic. If this doesn't work, I am worthless. That is the difference between a desperate hunter and a master archer. The archer pulls the string, aims, breathes, releases. Once the arrow leaves his hand, he does not run after it through the sky like a madman. He knows his part is done. At this gate, something strange begins to happen. Synchronicity. You think of someone, and they message you. You need an idea, and a book somehow falls into your hands. You are uncertain, and a stranger's sentence hits the exact place inside you that needed an answer. You stop chasing opportunities like a starving man. Opportunities begin appearing like footprints in the sand. Not because the universe is spoiling you, but because your inner world and outer world are beginning to move in the same rhythm. Synchronicity is not some cheap little miracle. It is a psychological sign that you have stopped fighting the deeper current of your own life. You no longer ask, "When will my life finally begin?" You ask, "Who is this moment asking me to become?" That question changes everything, because the best chapter of your life is not hiding somewhere in a shiny future. It begins when you act from your real self, right in the middle of a life that is still unfinished. You may still not be rich, still not famous, still not holding the final answer. But inside there is a new stillness. Like a cowboy after years of wandering, finally no longer needing to prove he is quicker on the draw than anyone else. He simply stands there, calm, dust on his coat, eyes fixed on the sunset. Not because he gave up, but because he has finally returned to the right saddle. Here, you begin to understand a strange paradox. Some doors do not open by force. The harder you pound on them, the tighter they lock. But when you become the right person, in the right rhythm, on the right frequency, the door opens as if it had been waiting for you all along. That is why some people, after a long season of silence, suddenly change their lives very quickly. Outsiders call it luck, but they did not see the years that person was pulled backward like an arrow. They did not see the nights when that person peeled off one mask after another. They did not see the moments when that person chose silence instead of crawling back to the crowd, begging for validation. They did not see the price of alignment. Sometimes, luck is just the lazy name outsiders give to a soul that has finally stepped into position. When you stop pushing the river, you realize you were the river all along. But the final gate is where the real reversal happens. You are not as afraid of failure as you think. You are afraid of success. You are afraid of your own light. You are afraid of what Jung called the golden shadow. Most people talk about the shadow as the place that holds the ugly parts: anger, envy, selfishness, desire, wounds, shame. And yes, that is true. But it is not the whole truth. Jung saw something deeper. There is gold in the darkness too. It is not only monsters locked in the basement of the psyche. There is genius down there too. There is power you are afraid to use. There is talent you keep shrinking. There is leadership you pretend you do not have. There is wisdom you hide so other people will not feel threatened. There is beauty, depth, sharpness, magnetism, influence. All of it wrapped up in a fake layer of humility. You call it, "I don't want to stand out." Sometimes that is cowardice. You call it, "I just live simply." Sometimes that is hiding from responsibility. You call it, "I'm not ready yet." Sometimes that is the ego making up stories so it does not have to step into the light. Here is the hard twist to swallow. You are not only afraid of your darkness, you are afraid of your greatness. Because if you admit you have gold, you no longer have an excuse to live like rust. If you admit you have a voice, you no longer have an excuse to stay silent. If you admit you have a mission, you no longer have the right to hide behind the sentence, "I'm just an ordinary person." The fifth gate forces you to kill your final excuses. "I'm too late." No. You are aged slowly. "I've been wounded too much." No. You were forged by fire. "No one supports me." No. You are learning to stand on your own spine. "I'm not good enough yet." No. You are using perfectionism to delay your arrival. Stop being a victim. Victimhood has a toxic little pleasure. It gives you a reason not to act. It turns the past into a prison, then hands you the key while you pretend not to see it. Integrating the golden shadow means you begin speaking a different language. No more, "I hope someday." Now it becomes, "I am the person doing this." No more, "I don't know if I'm allowed." Now it becomes, "I am responsible for my gift." No more, "I'm afraid of what people will think." Now it becomes, "I was not born to live in a way the crowd can comfortably swallow." This is not grandiosity. This is responsibility. Because unused talent turns poisonous. Unspoken clarity turns bitter. Unlived power becomes sickness in the soul. You were not given gold so you could bury it under the floorboards and sit there complaining that life is dark. You were given gold so you could forge it into a sword, a bell, a sun, a road, something other people can see and remember. They have fire too. Jung called this journey individuation, becoming the one person only you can become. Not a copy of your teacher, not the pleasant version your family prefers, not a puppet of the crowd, but you, whole, sharp, deep, carrying shadow, carrying gold, carrying scars, carrying fire. You will know you are getting close to the final gate when the fear of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of changing. When your old life feels like a town that has already burned down, and you know that even if the desert is waiting ahead, you still have to get on the horse and ride. Not because you are certain, but because going back has become even more terrifying. If you have listened this far, then maybe some part of you already recognizes this truth. You are not really failing. You simply can no longer keep winning at a game that costs you your soul. You are not lazy. You are exhausted from performing a role that has already expired. You are not lonely in the ordinary sense. You are being separated from the old mirrors so your real light finally has a chance to appear. You are not being left behind. You are in your root season, and you are not as afraid of the darkness as you think. You are afraid of the day you finally stand tall, claim your gold, and have no one left to blame. The new chapter does not begin with fireworks. It begins with one quiet sentence that can never be reversed. I am not going back to being the old me. Not going back to living just to be more acceptable. Not going back to being the healer for people who only wanted to drain your emotional blood. Not going back to smiling in rooms where your soul could barely breathe. Not going back to asking permission to become yourself. This is where Rubido begins. Not the dreamy stage. Not the stage where you sit around imagining light. But the stage where you step into real life with gold in your hand, dust on your coat, fire in your eyes, and a calmness that makes other people uncomfortable. Because they will feel it. You no longer need them to define you. And that is freedom. If this video touched the right crack inside you, leave one word in the comments. Gold, no long story, no explanation, no defense. Just write gold as an oath that you have seen the treasure you once buried in the darkness. And if you choose to stay on this journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Not just to hear a few beautiful words, but as a commitment. From today on, you will no longer live small, just to make the crowd feel comfortable. You are stepping into the chapter that should have been calling your name a long time ago. And if you know someone who is exhausted, someone who thinks they have lost their way, someone standing alone in the dusty red frontier town of their own life, share this video with them. Sometimes, a person does not need advice. They only need a sign. Be that sign. The best chapter of your life is no longer a dream hanging somewhere beyond the horizon. It is the moment you stop asking permission, stop bowing your head, stop shrinking yourself, stop negotiating with masks that have already rotted, and step out into the sunset like someone who has been burned long enough to know they are not ashes, they are gold.